Joe, I think we've tried to talk a little bit about your personal background, and we've talked a little bit about the college's beginnings, but we want to sort of carry it on from there and pick up with some of the other developments that occurred in the life of Clinch Valley College under your leadership. If you had to pick, and I say three because three is kind of a holy number, if you had to pick three things that you thought were key to the success of the college in the years after its beginning, and you can't count your retirement as one of those, what would those three things be, or any one of those things?
The first thing I would want to say that after the beginning, and we needed that second surge of energy, came with Buck Henson. I think that Buck Henson really made a great difference in the college, and what a blessing he was to all of us every day here. And so many things he started, you know, the Poor Farm Society, the Darden Society. He was just a very creative, wonderful, good person. So I'd say that I want to name Buck as the number one first blessing we had after the college was founded. And the second one, I believe that I would say that was so very important to us was the support we got from the local area, especially from a superintendent here in Wise County, Dick Richmond, who was the man who organized all that support to change us from a 2-year school to a 4-year school. And then the third, Brian, I'd want to say that that John Castine is the person who really has put the icing on the cake. He's the man who has made it happen and is still making it happen today.
Now let's start it back with Buck and talk a little bit more about Buck, and I'd say that part of that too would be Archer Jones coming in, because he had to help come up with a new set of faculty.
Yes.
You've sort of had generations of faculty,
Exactly.
and he and Buck and others were sort of part of that next tier that came after that initial group.
Yes.
So talk a little bit about what Buck brought, maybe a little bit about his background and what he was able to bring to the college.
Buck, you know, as it was a Lexington, Virginia man, and his father, Sergeant Henson, was the person who taught the VMI cadets to ride cavalry, and so Buck grew up in that military atmosphere. And so Buck, when he graduated from high school, he went in the Army. And of course, as you know, he was a company commander when he was 19 years old in Italy. So Buck brought all of that goodness and greatness with him to the college, and with him was that wonderful ability to get along with everyone, both in the college and out in the community, and was just a great teacher and a great research person. He's one of the few people that I've known that had his thesis in his back pocket before he ever went to graduate school. And so Buck made the place a better place and made it more academic, and I think strengthened the academic program.
Now, he was Dean of Students.
He's Dean of Students, yes.
And also, of course, a history professor, and I guess that's what we know him in the history department best for. And he's always famous for a great sense of humor.
Oh, yeah. He spoke to all the churches, and everybody loved to see him coming. And he was a great storyteller, and just was a happy, good person.
Well, it reminds me, you know, we talked about the farm before, and the poor farm, and the fact that it really was a working farm. And somebody came up to him and asked him how the college was going, and he said, "Oh, the college is doing so well and everything." And he says, "Well, I don't know about all that, but it's ruined the best damn farm in Wise County." So Buck, you got to give him credit. Always seemed to have that great story.
Yeah, he had another good story about that. He said that when the college started, we had the chickens and the pigs here, and somebody asked him what happened with the chickens.
It still had the pigs.
Still had the pigs.
Well, in terms of that next generation of faculty, was there anyone in particular? I know you've talked about some of the faculty members, but were there others that stood out to you for some reason or another, or students who stood out? And, you know, of course, we talked about one of the early students was your son, And I remember a story about a skeleton. I don't know if you want to share that one or not.
Yeah, that's the only time my son got me in jail. My son and lawyer Emmett Erie over at Abington were in my biology class, and for extra credit, they said they were going to bring in a human skeleton. Well, what happened was that Emmett's folks had been in the Norton Grocery Company, and they had sold it to Charlie Daniels, the plumbing company, and they had a skeleton up there that some lodge had used in a casket, and so Emmett said that they could bring it and give it to the college. So Joe and Emmett brought the skeleton to the college and gave it to the biology department. And Charlie Daniels complained mightily that the skeleton belonged to him. When he bought the building, he bought the skeleton.
He bought it lock, stock, and skeleton.
Lock, stock, and skeleton. And then, so he took me for warrant for being guilty of having stolen property. So I was over at the end eating with the lawyers and the judges and everybody, and the deputy sheriff came and took me over to jail. I thought it was a big joke, you know. Well, nobody told the deputy sheriff it was a joke, because he took me over there. He really didn't lock me up, but Charlie called and told him to turn me loose. So that's how it got. But one other thing, Brian, I thought one of the best compliments I ever received here was when my son was in school here, and that particular year, I was the only administrator. I was the director of the college and the acting dean, and we were searching for a dean. And of course, that's when we got Archer Jones. But one of my son's schoolmates here at the college said to him, "Is your dad going to apply for the dean's job?"
Oh.
And of course, I was already
a dean.
Yeah, I was already a dean and already the head of the college. But I thought that said something about my administration, which I believe that a lot of people complained about, and rightly so. But I always thought the least administration you could have, the better the school was going to be. I was a Jeffersonian administrator. And so I thought that was interesting that my son's best friend didn't know whom really ran the college. And I thought that was good.
That is good. Now, some faculty would claim that anyway, but
well, and rightly
for
so.
totally different reasons.
And by the way, now, with the university system and following the University of Virginia, the faculty is the most important agency at a college. And the college, really, the faculty, of course, is the ones that they do the degrees, and that's what a college is about. So well, I believe we always followed that university precedent of the importance of the faculty.
Well, now let me ask you another question, and it relates to that somewhat. And I had said something about, did you have any particular other faculty members that stood out? But one of the things that early on, and I don't remember exactly when it was, the college got accredited on its own. And that was important. That was one of those things that, again, established credibility and established that the college was a going concern.
Yes, and Brian, I'm glad you brought that up, because it does bring in a point here that's very important at the college. The college faculty wanted us to be accredited on our own. Now, we were always accredited as a part of the university. The day we opened the door, we were accredited. But we went through the self-study. We were visited by the committee and approved.
Well, now that also then brings us to how we transitioned from a 2-year to a 4-year college, and you've mentioned Mr. Richmond and how important he was. How about walking us through that whole process? When did the college decide that it really thought it was ready to take that step, and was it a step that it took deliberately and actively, or was it one of those things that kind of happened through happenstance and serendipity?
Oh, well, serendipity would be the better answer for that. Because we really didn't think we were prepared to go into the 3rd and 4th year, just to be honest with you. But what happened to us was the they were starting the community college system, and they were scrounging to find schools to make the nucleus of this new community college system in Virginia. And of course, Mills Godwin was the governor at the time, and so they naturally said, well, all the state schools that are two-year colleges, we will make them community colleges, because that's a natural thing. Here they are, they're already 2 years, and they're already here, so let's just do that. So we were put right in the middle of the pot. Now, we had nothing against the community college system. We wanted the community college system. We knew the state needed it, but we just were not community college material. And the reason for that is, of course, we had no vocational. We had some business courses, but that was the only vocational courses we had, and we knew nothing about vocational education. We were a liberal arts two-year school, and a good two-year liberal arts school. I'd say one of the best in the nation, really quality. And we were satisfied with that. And we were sending our students all over the country to Harvard and getting these wonderful reports back. And from their presidents, they said, send us more students from Clinch Valley College. And so we were very pleased to get that instant assessment of our students and what they're able to do. But we were stuck. We were either going to be a four-year school or a community college. So we got pushed in the back door, and that is, we became a four-year school. Now, as I mentioned a while ago, Dick Richmond was superintendent of schools here. He got every superintendent in the state to endorse Clinch Valley becoming a four-year school. He got them to go to the meeting of the state council, which had just voted no, that we were going to be a community college. And those superintendents poured into Richmond and were right there at the meeting and gave us that push that we needed to help us become a four-year school. But then the legislation was interesting. Northern Virginia had already submitted a bill making the university's college, which is now, what is the university?
You're talking about George Mason?
George Mason. George Mason, and they already had a bill in to make George Mason a four-year school. So our legislators got together, and Senator Long was a powerful man. He could get things done.
Now, there are two M.M. Longs, and one's a senator and the other's a judge, or is that the same?
Yeah, that's the judge is the son.
Is the son, okay.
Yes. And Senator Long was a University of Richmond man, and he is an Eastern Virginia man, and he is powerful. He and who's the old doctor of the Senate, Haygood, they ran the place up there. And if you didn't vote for Senator Long's bill, he would put it in his pocket and say, when you get ready to see your way around to helping us, we'll be glad to help you. So he played hardball. So Senator Long wanted to write a bill making us a four-year school. But Orby Cantrell, our delegate, he saw this opening. He said, if we can get an amendment to the George Mason bill, put our name, then the northern legislators will vote with us.
Would support us. They'd be with us.
And together we can pull it off. Now, if we go lone on Senator Long's bill, that's a real iffy. So they talked Senator Long into pulling his bill, which he didn't want to do. He really wanted to put that bill in. But Orby's amendment went through. And that's how we became a four-year school.
Now, you've got Orby Cantrell, you've got M.M. Long, Sr.,
yes,
and then you've got also Edgar Bacon, and who were some of the other legislators that were part of that process?
Edgar Bacon was very important because they also, Northern Virginia, wanted liquor by the drink. So Edgar engineered the Southwest delegation to support them on that bill. So there's little, and of course that's what makes
little quid pro quo there.
Right, exactly right. You worked for the General Assembly, you know how that
That's
works.
right. That's been a long time ago, but
And that's good. That's the way it ought to work. That's the way compromise makes good legislation. It's interesting that, of course, Senator Long is a powerful Democrat, but he did not like Henry Howe. He was a very conservative Democrat, and so he didn't like Henry Howe. He liked Mills Godwin, both as a Democrat and as a Republican, and I liked him too. And so
Henry was a different sort of fellow, though,
Henry
wasn't he?
was a different sort of fellow. So Mills happily signed the bill, which.
Well, I was going to ask you about that too, because you've got a picture that I know has been on your wall, and
Yes.
it's a picture of Mills Godwin, rather,
Right.
sitting there signing it, and I think Orby's behind it,
Orby
and
and
Edgar's there,
Yeah,
but that was just a huge moment in the life of the college.
that really was. And of course, what Dick Richmond's argument, and he had a very good one, see, people just don't realize that we had teachers teaching here with a high school diploma, teaching in our schools, in our local, and in our country schools. Then we were having real difficulty finding teachers with a 4-year degree before the college opened. So nowadays that sounds so ridiculous, but that's just the way it was. So actually, Dick Richmond wanted these 4-year degrees. And to show you how important that was, Brian, I looked to see when the college started here, as I remember, we had one teacher with a bachelor's degree from Charlottesville. Now, most of the other teachers were from schools such as my own school at LMU. Most of the teachers here that had 4 degrees were local colleges. And a few, from outside. But as I remember, one teacher here in this county with a 4-year degree from Charlottesville. 6 years after the college started here, we had 30 teachers here in the county with a bachelor's degree from the University of Virginia. Because so many of those students, it's interesting, Brian, that so many of the students that the local schools around would not accept C's for credit in the colleges around in the area from Clinch Valley. They'd give you full credit for A's and B's, but C's, they were not given credit. But they'd go to Charlottesville and get credit. So we had some to go for the wrong reason. Some to go because they wanted to go because they made C's.
They transferred up.
Right, they transferred.
Now, grade points was an issue, though, with the university at one time.
Absolutely. Now, you got a good point there, and a very important point. And you see this man in the news around some now. A young man by the name of Johnny Bolton from St. Paul. His father was an oil dealer in St. Paul. He was a student at Charlottesville, a very good student. And he wanted to come to Clinch Valley to take physics in the summer. And Theo Gibson was teaching physics in the summer school. And he came and took the course and made an A. And the university would give him credit. They'd give him credit for the course, but no grade points. That is Charlottesville now. Would not give grade points to Johnny Bolton, who took the course here and made an A. They said, we'll give you credit, and he wanted to go to medical school, which he did, to Duke Medical School. He went to Duke. But Johnny, his father was a powerful fellow, so he sat in with Senator Long, and Bill Thompson Sr., who was chairman of our local board at the time, and they wanted to know why the university wouldn't give grade points for their own school. So I went up to Charlottesville and was in the office with Joe Vaughn, who at that time was the provost, and the man we contacted. Mr. Darden was the president. So Joe and I got into a big argument. I said, I really nailed him. And this, Lord must have sent this message, because I nailed him. I said, you give grade points for extension courses, and why are you not giving grade points for a course at your school, Clinch Valley College? Joe Vaughn said, we don't give grade points for extension courses. I said, you do give it. So you was going back and forth. He picked up the telephone and called Mr. Darden. So Mr. Darden had us to come over to his office. He called D. Runk, who was the registrar of the university. And I can see Mr. Darden sitting there now. He said, D, do we give grade points for extension courses? He said, yes, sir. He turned to Joe Vaughn. He said, we will give grade points to Clinch Valley College students. That's a very important point in the life of the college. But thank goodness we had Mr. Darden.
Well, and he was such a blessing in so many ways.
Oh,
if you had to think of even 2 or 3, and I know you could think of 1,000 or a dozen anyway, from the grounds, he took a great interest in the grounds.
Yes.
Took a great interest.
Planted those trees over there, and now around the faculty, he planted those big trees himself.
And then, you know, he donated money to projects.
He bought all the land over there where the football field is. All that he and his wife donated. All this land back here, where the parking lot's above the science building, he and his wife donated that. And the land, especially around where the chancellor's home is built, and that's a wonderful story in itself. The man had the contract to strip mine that land. Now, not where the house is now, but all those trees around it. So when Linwood Holton was the governor, and Linwood was a great blessing to us in many ways. And so I went up and told Linwood we had a problem, that I'd like to save these trees. We'd like to have a buffer zone of trees between the strip mines and the college. And I said, I talked to the miner, and he said he's going to strip it. So he called up Mr. Darden. Governor Holton called Mr. Darden. See, this is bipartisan good work going on. And so Mr. Darden said, well, we need to do something about that. So then he called the miner, the superintendent of the mines, and told him that we wanted to save these trees. So I could hear him talking on the phone, and the miner said, the superintendent said, nobody's worried about that except Joe Smiddy. And Linwood said, well, there are some other people who are interested in that. He said, who? He said, Mr. Darden, for one. So, to make a long story short, Mr. Darden and Governor Holton bought it. They bought the land and saved those trees, which you see, beautiful trees, around the chancellor's house today.
While we're on Holton, though, talk about how we ended up with a pool.
That's very interesting. The Appropriations Committee used to come on bus tours, and tour all the state institutions. And the governor would come with them. And so they were here in Wise to look at our budget request. And so we had a big dinner down at the inn at Wise. And so then we were going up to Kent and Liza Rose Riggs' house right up above the inn for a party. So I'd been after Linwood to help us get this swimming pool, and Linwood said, what's wrong with the blue hole? That's the hole in the river down at Big Stone where he used to go and swim.
Right, when he was a
when he was
kid.
a youngster growing up. And I said, well, the blue hole won't do for other college students. And he said, now, Joe, the state does not build swimming pools. We're not going to build a swimming pool. But then he said himself, when he saw me going out the door with Roy Smith on one side, who was the chief man in the House, and Senator Willie on the other side,
Ed Willie,
and I had the banjo on my shoulder carrying some liquid refreshments. Linwood said, oh, hell, there goes the swimming pool.
they're going to get that pool now.
Yes,
aren't they?
there goes the swimming pool. So Linwood signed the bill, and we got the swimming pool.
Now, to his credit, after it got built, because of course it took a little time, and he was out of office by the time it was built, he came back though.
Yeah, he came back and dedicated the pool, and that's interesting. I told him, I said, now, Governor, I think they're going to push you in the pool.
Uh-oh.
I said, I believe you ought to come prepared. He said, that'd be good. That'll be fun. So he came with the blue jeans on, and I had my best suit on, my billfold, my watch, and these beautiful co-eds went up and pushed the governor in the pool, and I was standing there clapping. All of a sudden, the governor said, you sure had a funny look on your face before you hit the water. I said, Governor, that was not part of the plan. That was my best suit, my watch, my billfold, and I went right in the pool with him.
Yeah.
But Linwood was a great blessing to us and is a wonderful person. Another interesting story about that, when Linwood was running for governor, of course, Nixon was vice president, and his sister had been here in summer school. The governor's Holton's sister, Harriet. And she called me up and she said, Joe, Vice President Nixon is coming out to the Wise Airport to make a speech for a brother. And I don't think there'll be many people there. Do you think you could get some college students to go out to the airport? I said, yeah, Harriet, I'll give it a try. So we had an old surplus bus that we got off the Navy in Norfolk, and it was something. I loaded down with students. I mean, and I drove it. I drove them out to the Wise International and parked out there, and those students all got out of that bus. And Vice President Nixon, he came and stood on the wing of that airplane and made a speech for Linwood. So I took a load of students out there. The wonderful thing is that it just seemed like the colleges had that guardian angel that we just happened to be at the right place at the right time in history and had the right people. And without that, you know, we just would not ever been able to be what we are today.
Well, when we look back at the college's history, and of course you've seen it grow and developed, and I think it was George Culbertson who said that we always seem to be on that slippery slope, or that you know, any moment things might begin to slide off. When did you feel more comfortable that the college really had staying power? Was it after the 4-year change? Was it before that sometime? Or what is it at some point that you said, this really is going to go places?
Actually, you know, I felt more in that slippery slope when Chuck Robb was governor and John Castine was Secretary of Education. And the state budget, we ran into bad years. It's like the Bible talk, good years and bad years. Well, and by the way, right now it's not too good in the state budget, as you know. They're cutting back on the state budget. But during this period, the Chuck Robb period, they ran into a bad year, and they were looking for institutions to close. So it was reported to me by Orby Cantrell that we had been placed on the hit list, that they were going to close us down. And so I went to John Castine and told him, I remember telling him, I said, John, you're the only friend we've got here in Richmond, and you really got to help us. And John Castine did help us. Mm-hmm. And of course, we took the cuts, but we were able to weather the storm. Mm-hmm. But of course, you know, Orby and Senator Long both were there then, and both of them powerful. And then, of course, Senator Buchanan succeeded Senator Long, mm-hmm. and could never have a better person than Senator Buchanan, Dr. Buchanan. He is such a wonderful, highly educated person, and very committed to this area, having grown up and born over in Dickinson in a town called Darwin, in Dickinson County. But John Castine really did help us at a time when we really needed it. Mm-hmm. And there's a few other times when we had scary moments. I don't remember any time being afraid that we're going to be closed during our 2-year period, but during the 4-year period, that was a scary time. And of course, you know, that's when legislators and elected officials start looking for money, you have to look out mm-hmm. because the people who have the clout in Richmond are the ones that are going to come out on top, mm-hmm. of course. And now the greatest administrator that I have ever known was Marshall Holmes, mm-hmm. the president of Virginia Tech. Mm-hmm. Now he was a powerful man. He was a powerful fellow. And of course I got to be in a meeting every month with all of these presidents, and the interesting thing, VMI and Clinch Valley always hung together because we were the low boys, you know, and the generals, the commandants of VMI always stayed with us, and we stayed with them. So we sort of looked after one another. But I was before the Appropriations Committee one time, and first, the university came on and gave their budget. Then VPI came on and gave their budget. And they asked for millions, you know. Mm-hmm. And, of course, Clinch Valley's asking for thousands. And so when I got up before the Appropriations Committee, I said, I sort of feel like I did when I was a young boy at home on the farm. I said, my dad and I were sitting out under a tree eating strawberries, and the preacher came up, and my dad said, Preacher, would you like to have some strawberries? And he said, yeah. So he said, Joe, run in and get him a bowl there and get him some strawberries. Well, I went in the house and got him some strawberries and brought it out there. This little pig came up and started nuzzling around on the preacher, and the preacher said, that is a friendly little pig. And I said, yes, you're eating out of his bowl. So I said, these big guys are eating out of our bowl. We don't have anything left. So they got a real kick out of that.
I bet they did.
The members of the Appropriations Committee.
You remember, was that a better year because of that?
That's a better year. That really was a better year.
Well, now, when you look at Charlottesville and you look at Richmond, and you have to go and you have to deal with those things, who would you say were the people that you could work best with, that you remember most positively? I know you've told me before that Gerald Bliles was a good governor and a friendly governor to the college.
It's interesting, Brian, that just to give a little side story how things happened, I got a letter, which I have at home, from Lindsey Almond, and he sent a letter to President Shannon saying that the other heads of the other colleges were being adequately paid, but that you're starving the fellow to death out at Clinch Valley College. I know that the president of the university thought that I had been in Richmond in politicking, which absolutely wasn't true. I can say this with all honesty. I never asked for a raise in my life. I never asked for a promotion in my life. It just seemed that it just came. So I didn't. I was not guilty. But later on, what I found out was my LMU biology buddy was the governor's doctor.
Oh.
Henry Spencer from Lee County was Governor Almond's doctor. So he told the governor that they were starving his buddy to death. I never had a thing to do with it, but I'm sure the university always thought that I had been politicking.
Well, but you had the best politics in the world. You weren't involved in it, and you had somebody who had the ear of the governor.
Exactly right. So it's just like another thing that happened during John Dalton's administration, and this is interesting. Wade Gilley was the Secretary of Education under John Dalton. Now Wade is a Wytheville product, and he was the first president of the Wytheville Community College. And his wife lived right here in this building, was one of our students, Nana McBeverly from Clintwood. Lived here, graduated here from our 2-year school, went to Radford, and met Wade Gilley, who was an engineering student at Tech at the time. When he became Secretary of Education, he looked through the perks that all the presidents of the state schools have, and he found, of course, that Plains Valley had none. And so he told John Dalton that not only did I not have a chancellor's home, I didn't have an allowance, housing allowance, didn't get anything. So John Dalton went to the university and said, Smiddy needs some help out at Plains Valley College. I'm sure, again, that they probably thought, that I'd been messing in politics, which absolutely wasn't true either, because now Wade Gilley was and is a friend of mine, but I never asked him to intercede for me. But John Dalton got me a housing allowance, which was about 2 or 3 years before I retired. Thank goodness it did help some in retirement.
Now, we won't get quite to retirement yet, but when we think back on students and of course faculty too, there were volatile times, and you have talked before about the unions and some of the pressure and some of the coal companies and so forth. I'm sure all sorts of groups wanted the college to take a stand, but there was also, of course, the Vietnam era, and I didn't know if you wanted to talk a little bit about what you experienced in that period of time and what the college experienced.
I'll tell you the truth, Brian, that was a very difficult time for all of us, especially for students, faculty, and for administrators. It was a difficult time, and it's one of the most difficult times for me because I was caught right in the middle, and I knew that the only industry we really had was the coal industry, and the only way we had of raising money and support was through the coal industry. And the students were making the signs and going down on the streets and wise and protesting the need for reclamation laws. Now, most of them were coming out of Helen Lewis's sociology department, and of course the coal company hated Helen Lewis with a perfect passion, and so they came to me and they'd say, "What is the college's position on surface mining?" And I said, the college doesn't have any position on surface mining. We have people who are for it. We have people who are against it. The college is a place where people have their own ideas and are able to pursue their own ideas. The students can pursue their own ideas, but we don't have any position on mining. So they didn't understand that. Why don't you? I said, well, the college is not made that way. The college is made for everyone to have their own supporting any belief they believed in and wanted to support, that's okay.
Well, now you had a saying that you were never responsible or something for anything that happened at the college, and I've heard a faculty member that was here at the time sort of say he wished you wouldn't say that because of course you were the chancellor and director. But at the same time, your point was that you weren't trying to drive anything, or you weren't trying to force anything. You weren't trying to create some image that you had drawn up. And so your chancellorship in that sense was letting the college be freer to be itself.
We truly had academic freedom. Now, and I was a young fellow, and I made some mistakes. I certainly not don't even come close to being a perfectionist. Because we just stumbling along, and I always thought you really, when you judge people's work, do they have a good average? It's not are you perfect, do you have a good average? And I always thought I had a good average, but I knew I wasn't perfect, and there's some things that that I was a country boy learning, but I had some good people to learn from. And thank goodness I did know enough, and to be with people like Mr. Darden again. Now Mr. Darden reminded me of my dad. Only my dad was not educated like Mr. Darden, but they thought alike. And Mr. Darden, for example, when Eisenhower sent the troops to Arkansas, Mr. Darden had served in the General Assembly and had served with John L. Lewis, the president of the Mine Workers Union. And he told me, he said, John L. Lewis is a bright man. John L. Lewis is self-educated, but there's two things he knows. He knows the Bible and he knows Shakespeare. And he said, I like John L. Lewis. But then he commented on President Eisenhower, which I thought was interesting. He said, the president should not have sent troops. He should have sent marshals. Because Americans don't like for troops to come from Washington into their state. He said he'd have been better served. But he said, and I thought this is interesting, he said, if you ask a military man a question, he's going to give you a military answer. Isn't that something that we really historically need to remember in today's world? So Mr. Darden was such a wonderful man. I was taking him, he liked to go to Dungannon and go through, because he wanted to see the farms. And we were going over one time, and there's a man plowing. And he said, Joe, stop here a minute. So I stopped the car, and he got out, and he watched that fellow. And when the fellow came close to the fence, he said, I've been watching you, sir, and you plow a straight furrow. He said, when I was a boy, I could do that. And he got back in the car and said, let's go on.
It was that moment of nostalgia for him.
Moment of going back.
Well, he was a Southampton County boy, and so he grew up in that kind of farm environment. And, we're very proud of Darden, and of course, as I mentioned, Godwin in that part of the state, too. Let me, though, get back to one other thing. That we were talking a little bit about some of these more controversial moments and the things that the college had to weather a little bit, and I mentioned Vietnam. I know you had at one time some debates between some of the faculty members and the students. How much did the students get involved in what was happening in Southeast Asia? Was that something that mattered to them, or was that lost in more local kinds of interests?
I went over, last week, I guess, to the coffee house here at the college for the reading of the original writings of the students. And I told the students, I said, it was a little more lively over here in the end of the 60s and early 70s. I said, you go to the coffee house, I said, it's a pretty lively place. And it was back in those days. But to give you another answer there, Brian, when the students were killed at Kent State, now we had a very active movement, of anti-war movement here on the campus. I mean, these students were out there. And of course, that's good. Nobody dissuaded them, and nobody quarreled with them. But when the students were killed at Kent State, had a delegation came in office, and they said, we want to have a memorial service for the students killed at Kent State. I said, that's fine. I think that'll be good. I said, where do you want to have it? And they said, up at the flagpole, which then was the other side of Zemer.
In between Zemer and the Science.
Exactly right. So I said, I think that'll be fine. And I said, what time? And they said 12 noon Monday. And I said, that's good. I said, I'll be there. They said, we want you to lower the flag. Now, I said, I really don't have that power. I can't, the governor can lower the flag, but I can't lower the flag. But I'll be there. So I went, and the students and the faculty, we had faculty members, anti-war speeches from both students and faculty members. I remember Charlie Lewis made a powerful anti-war speech, and good. Of course, Charlie's good. Charlie could do it. Charlie could speak. And now, I didn't like everything they said. Of course, you know, being a mountain boy, just out of the war myself, and you know, you know, it wasn't all pleasing to me. But you know, I thought, well, they have a right to have a memorial service, and they did. So I then went to town to lunch. I always ate when I was here. I ate with the lawyers and the judges and some business people in town. We'd all gather there for lunch. So one of the important fellas came up to me and he said, I understand you had a right out to college this morning. I said, well, no, we had a memorial service to the students killed at Kent State. He said, I suppose if you have a right out to the college, you'll play them a song on the dulcimer. I said, yes, that wouldn't be bad. I said, then the next day we'd all be alive. But it was a difficult time. Now, Brian, you probably haven't heard this story. One of the most difficult periods when the student editor accused me of being bribed to let the coal operators strip mine on the college campus. Now, this turned out to be bad. This was not good, because it was right after the Watergate, and they had all these eager beaver reporters.
All of them trying to make a name
all
for
of them trying to make a name for themselves and find another Watergate. Here they came from CBS, NBC, right here.
Oh, my goodness.
Right here into my office, saying, I understand that the student editor of your paper has written an article accusing you of being bribed to allow the coal company to mine on college property. And I remember the man from CBS, a nice fellow, I don't remember his name, but a big-time reporter. He said, does it bother you? I said, well, yes, it bothers me. He said, why does it bother you? I said, it bothers me because the only thing I have to sell is integrity. And yes, it bothers me. But no, it's not true. I said, in the first place, we do have a contract with a mining company to mine on the college property, and I did recommend that. I did not write the contract. The contract was written in Charlottesville. I said, we here at this college have no authority to do anything with property. It all belongs to the University of Virginia's Board of Visitors. So I did recommend it, yes. But he said, I understand the coal company gave you an airplane and bribed you to let them sign a contract. Well, I said, that's not true. I said, it is true we have an airplane. But I said, I've never seen the airplane. I never did see the airplane. Clayton Willis, of course, is the business manager, and he had gone to Charlottesville and signed with the signing and the writing of the contract, which I had nothing to do with at all, no input. I just said, I recommend that that we allow this coal over there where the football field is to be strip mined. So I said, I had no contact with the coal people whatsoever, and no one has been bribed. And I said, I didn't even see the airplane. But Clayton Willis, the business manager, advertised the airplane that the coal people gave us in an aviation journal and sold it for $50,000 and put the money in the scholarship fund. I said, you can go over there and see at the business office where the money has been deposited. I said, I had nothing to do with it, but I did recommend that the coal companies be allowed to strip mine the coal because we're going to use the money to build a student center, which we did. Yeah. That's where most of the money for Cantrell Hall came from. But that was not a comfortable time. Now, the interesting thing, I never said a word to the student editor. Never ever said a word, good or bad. I never did say a word to her. I don't even remember her name, but she was not from around here. But, and I don't know where in the world she got that idea at all. But anyway, it was a very uncomfortable time. It's probably my most uncomfortable time here. But I never said an unkind word to the woman, the girl, the student that wrote it. I had a real desire to find these students that didn't know they could go to college, didn't have any money, and to make a way for them. And so I volunteered 3 things. I volunteered, I had a little band, got no extra pay for anything. I had a little band, had a glee club. I directed the band, the glee club, and I volunteered to go to the high schools to recruit students. And I'd go talk to these students, African Americans, poor people, poor white people, poor African Americans, and I'd take hold of these boys. And I'd say, we have a place for you. We have some money for scholarships. We have an opportunity. This is the only opportunity you'll ever have in your life. And right now, we're offering it to you. I mean, physically, I'd just take hold of them. And so that's what I thought I was really here to do. That was my main my work centered because of that principle that took me as a high school student and drove me to Lincoln Memorial University and said, here's a poor boy that needs to go to college. So I was so thankful that I was able to pass that on so many times, that I was able to do that for other students. As I used to tell the students when we'd have orientation in the first days of school, I'd say to the students, you are not an empty vessel. You have talents that you don't know about and we don't know about. So it's our job to help you find that talent and to help you develop it. That's what we're here for. And as Zelma Sue Mullins said, she is valedictorian here at Wise High School. Zelma Sue, I tried to recruit her. She's a bright, wonderful, bright woman, but she wanted to go to a Christian college. So She went to a Christian college and paid the tuition and found out that it wasn't accredited. So they wouldn't refund her money. And she came back home. And we'd been in school a week. And so she came back and told me her story. She had no money, but she wanted to go to school here. So I said, Zelma Sue, go down to the registrar's office and register. She said, I don't have any money. I said, I don't have any either. I said, we don't have any money. And so she said, okay, Mr. Smiddy, this sounds like one of these wild preacher stories, but this is the truth. About an hour later, George Scott, who was one of the owners and manager of Coca-Cola, poked his head in the door and said, George, just coming by here, wanting to holler at you. I said, hold it right there.
Hold it right
Hold it right there. I said, hold it right there, George. I said, the Lord has sent you. No, he said, I don't think the Lord sent me anywhere this morning. Yep, he sent you right here. And I told him about, he wrote a check for the tuition fees for the year. Paid up, the little girl right there. The young lady that was our student, that was the dean down at Mountain Empire, I can't think of her name now. She came here and went and graduated here, went on to graduate school and became dean at, she's now a community college president in New York State. She's a pound girl. Then her husband, or then I guess they weren't even courting, or probably didn't know one another, but I don't know how he got here, but he was a Vietnam veteran. He said, I got in the registration line. I'd applied for the GI Bill, but I hadn't got my papers back. And so I got in the registration line, and when it came up to pay, I didn't have any money. So Mr. Willis said, well, go down there and see Mr. Smiddy. So he came down there, and he said that I said, well, let's go back and get in the registration line. He said, well, I still don't have any money. I said, well, let's just all go with you. So we got to the pay place, and the young ladies on that window told him how much he owed, and I said, just lay that little thing right up there on that shelf, and when his money comes in, we'll be down here and pay it. She said, you can't do that, state won't. I said, let's just do it anyway. Mother, the business professor, came into my office one day and said, there is a colored woman, of course there were colored people in those days, you know. There's a colored woman that wants to go to college. What shall I tell her? I said, tell her to come on. She said, I understand that it's against the law in Virginia for a colored student to go to a white state school. And I understand it's against the law for a white student to go to a colored state school. I said, I really don't know much Virginia law. I said, tell her to come on. Well, I didn't know whom she was. I didn't ask whom she was. I didn't ask anything. So I was sitting there on registration day, and the student came in there. Said, Mr. Smiddy, there's a colored woman out there in the registration line. What are you going to do? I had thought about that. This wasn't spontaneous. I said, I'm going out there to see what color her money is. If her money's green, we're going to take her. So I didn't even go out there. I didn't even see the woman. I didn't go out of the office. I just stayed there till the woman registered and paid. Well, what I found out was she actually had a degree from Virginia State, but she wanted to qualify to be a business teacher. But this woman, her father and mother had degrees. So she was a highly educated young lady. And of course she came here and did that, and as you know the rest of the story, she got her PhD and is now a retired professor from the University of Missouri. The interesting thing, Brian, I never had one single person to ever say a word to me about that. Nobody said she shouldn't be here, nobody. And I thought that'd be true. I really didn't. I didn't think we'd have any trouble. Not a single person said a word about that.